Hey guys, it's Rose from Yeloy again here, potentially just from YouTube, but definitely from Yeloy. So today is another one of my What's in my record collection videos, and we're going to be going straight back to 1981 with one of my favourite records of all time by one of my favourite bands of all time. It's the Stray Cats' debut album. It's got to be one of the coolest, rawest rockabilly revival albums, although it is pretty much just solid through and through rockabilly. And it's very important because it took that kind of niche retro rockabilly subculture to becoming, you know, more international and more mainstream. As you're probably aware, the story starts in Massapequa, New York, with guitarist Brian Setzer, drummer Slim Jim Phantom, and bass player Lee Rocker. Basically not really breaking out of the scene in New York. It's still, you know, the whole rockabilly thing is still incredibly underground there. So one-way plane tickets, they get on the plane to London with hardly anything on their backs, I believe, because we still had teddy boy culture and stuff in the UK, so they thought, oh, they can probably make it big there. So you can't get a record deal in America, so they thought, well, we can probably get one here. And so, sure enough, they played a gig at the Music Machine in Camden, and guess who came to their show? None other than Dave Edmunds of his own fame and of Rockpile fame, and also in the film Stardust, in which Dave Edmunds is in, there's a band called the Stray Cats. I'm not sure if they ever, well, I'm sure that they would have had that discussion and be like, oh, isn't that wicked that we have like the same name or something, but you know, anyway, just a quick thought. And so this album right here was then recorded in Eden Studios in London in 1980. And so it is sort of recorded in a more live room setting, which is obviously akin to the original Sun Sessions recordings, you know, like Elvis's ones and stuff like that. So you can tell that there's minimal overdubs. Of course there is, because you can hear some panning and such of the different little like guitar fill overdubs that Brian does, but they are pretty cool. And so gear wise, I'm gonna just go off on a little gear thing here for all the gear heads out there. Brian Setzer plays a 6120 Gretsch Chet Atkins model. This one right here, 1959 one at that. So, you know, that's obviously the classic rockabilly sort of recipe because it's a hollow body, has, you know, single coil Filtertron pickup. So basically it's got the sound already. It has the look and the sound. It's the rockabilly instrument. And then there was also the use of an Echoplex tape delay, which is obviously rockabilly hero, sort of. If you know, you know. And then Lee Rocker used an upright bass, which is obviously visible here. I don't really know much about that. I don't intend to know more about that. I think I'll stick to the guitars. And then it's the same with Slim Jim's drum situation. Obviously upright, there's just a snare and a kick drum, which again, you'd ask my sister, she's the drummer. I'm not too sure on that, but it looks pretty darn cool. But I don't know how that affects the sound. Well, obviously, it's a lot simpler. And so the album was cut fast, maybe in like a couple of weeks. It was also recorded partially at Jam Studios, I believe, and as well, yes, it says at the back, was recorded in Jam Studios and Eden Studios in London. Okay, now it's time to talk about the songs because they are totally rocking. Again, this is one of my favourite albums by anyone ever because it starts off with Runaway Boys, which is one of the most fantastic. It's got like a punk edge to it. So they bring in the rockabilly back, but without combining it to be punk and rockabilly. It's rockabilly with a punk edge. You can just hear that. It's very urgent and it's one of the best opening tracks to any album, I think. Then there is Fishnet Stockings, which was what is actually a couple of my friends' favourites actually. And then there's You Bangy Stomp, which is sort of a deep cut cover actually, which they pulled out of the bag and put on an album that they try to get mainstream, which is kind of cool because it's a 50s novelty track, obviously. And it's probably one of the clearest examples of how they, you know, took this old-fashioned rockabilly sound and made it, you know, punkier without being punk, if that makes sense. And then you've just got total killers like Rumblin' Brighton. I mean, who doesn't like that one? Stray Cats Strut, which I believed had them achieve some mainstream success. Overall, there was Rock This Town, which did the greatest. This album reached number 9 on the UK singles chart when it was released with the album, and the US version, which was released in 1982, because obviously they'd released this in while they were in London, so it was obviously a UK forward thing. And so when it finally got released into America in 1982, it reached actually number 9 again on the US Billboard Top 100. Sound wise, sonically, this really stands out to me because obviously, because it sounds like it's just breaking up. It's not a polished 80s record. They could have gone for that, but obviously Dave Edmunds, being, you know, rockabilly minded, knew what they wanted, and, you know, put it into such a great album. It sounds like it's fighting to not break through the sleeve, if you get what I mean. It's kind of raw, but it's obviously perfect. And obviously it was something to prove to everyone, like, hey guys, this is rockabilly and it's cool, it's not your mum and dad's music. Because obviously I guess the people at the time would have believed that, you know, the likes of Eddie Cochran and Gene Vincent were like the things of the past, but, you know, they brought it back. And so this charted at number 6 in the UK, which if you think about it is quite, you know, it's quite a feat considering it's a rockabilly revival band. I mean, who'd really heard of that other than like the couple ones in London in the, you know, mid to late 70s. Therefore, it helped launch their career and then led to their 1982 US release, At Home, their home tour, which was from 1982, which is a compilation of the tracks from this and their second album. And therefore, without this album, you don't get any of the other bands that came out after this, as well as the, you know, the popularity of that rockabilly sound. So we have this album and, you know, Brian, Slim Jim and Lee to thank for this. If you're confused by what I'm saying about the them having another album out in the United States, this was released on Arista in 1981 in the UK, and then it was compiled with their second album in 1982 for the Americans to hear. So they finally got through to America, but it did take them going to London to get there. So if you've never spun this album before, or you have it lying in the back somewhere, you need to stick it on and listen to it in all its glory, and also kind of bask in the overall aesthetics of this album, because I mean, how's this for the inside sleeve of an album? I mean, that's pretty killer, isn't it? They're the whole deal here. So think about this when it came out, and there's a big mass-produced overproduction of, you know, synth pop bands in, you know, 1981. They were coming out with this. They were being greasy and raucous, and they came out with this. So I'm gonna do a little bit of playing, because I'm a guitarist, by the way. So, how did that happen?